what was it like growing up in Rocky Mountain? I mean,
I loved it. I wouldn't want to grow up in any other place.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of knew everybody. You knew what days, what park everybody's going to be playing.
That's
ball
right.
in.
And there was a hierarchy of parks too, if I remember when I was a kid, right? I used to love to play. As I told Reggie and others, I still have 4 years of eligibility left.
Right.
But yeah, Sunset Park was like the great park. That's right.
The Raleigh on a certain day.
That's right. That's
day.
right. That was just fun and ride your bike around and I never felt unsafe. You know.
I used to walk from J.W. Parker School.
Yeah.
And I lived in Little Raleigh up into the 9th grade. So I would walk from J.W. Parker to Little Raleigh, home sometimes by myself, sometimes with another guy.
That was a little bit of a hike.
Yeah.
So where'd you pick up basketball? I mean, I know you've had all these questions before in the past, but I mean, how did it become your passion? I mean, and you obviously were one of the greatest of all time.
Well, that's very nice of you to say.
And certainly for Rocky Mountain boys, you're among the superstars of all superstars. Yeah.
No, man, Rocky Mountain, for a small city, has had a lot of great athletes.
It really has.
And a lot of great businessmen.
Absolutely.
A lot of great musicians. I just found out a couple of days ago that Greg and Dwayne Allman's mom grew up in Rocky Mountain. Did you know that?
I did not until she died recently.
Yeah,
and that's where I saw it too. And I was like, wow, I had no idea.
Yeah.
So anyway. What do you see as being the biggest issue for youth and youth development in Rocky Mountain, other cities, in the communities? Because at the end of the day, that's really what's important for us going forward. We were talking a little bit earlier. I can't change anything in my past. Some things I'd love to. Some things I would. I don't want to take another shot at it because it worked out okay. But how do we help guys going forward? Because I think
it's somewhere we can push education.
Right.
I think it's a blessing when you're able to become a football player, basketball player, baseball player. But the chances of that happening, are very slim. And when I say education, I'm not even talking about maybe a 4-year schools aren't for everyone. Like a trade school or, a business school to, just to learn to have a trade or a job or something that you can take care of yourself and your family the rest of your life. I think that's important to somehow make that important again in education.
Right.
Because I think it's kind of lost its glimmer a little bit.
Yeah. Well, you've been in the youth development business basically all of your career. I mean, as an assistant coach in various places. And, so what do you see as the most important thing for those kids? Now, they've made it to another level. I mean, you get a scholarship to play basketball at Carolina, you've certainly done something, accomplished something. But they still have the same needs everybody else. It's 18, 19, 20, 21.
Kids.
That's right.
Yeah, they're just kids like everybody else.
Right.
It's just that Wednesday nights and Thursday and Saturday afternoon, you want them to be a little different. But, I think they need to be treated just like any other kids. They have needs, they have feelings, they growing up.
Right.
So I think you have to be there for them to comfort them when they're going through tough times and to teach them how to handle success and teach them how to handle failure as well, because it's very important. And the only thing about that is different than someone that's not an athlete at a quote, school that you live in, a fishbowl that people see you growing up.
Right.
And they see you going through your ups and downs. So it's they're no different than any other kids, I think.
Right. And you're back to education, you're talking about how to make a living. It's amazing. I can go to school and become a lineman. I can be done in 6 months, 7 months. My starting wage is $75,000 a year.
Good money.
Great money. I can be a welder. I can come out.
We were talking about, Buddy and I were talking, and don't talk about the underwater one.
Oh, I know. Those guys. $200,000, $300,000.
That's crazy, isn't it?
It really is.
I remember I built a couple of homes, and I'm telling you, I told my ex, man, I wish I knew how to lay brick.
No doubt. Well, there are more millionaires in the trades than there are in senior management positions. Nobody thinks of it in those terms. It's not a showy job. But daggone it, Brick Mason, absolutely, he's working hard. I'm switching gears on you a little bit, and I hope that's okay. What was it like being coached by Dean Smith, and what was it like working with him for all those years?
It was a dream come true for me. Because you can imagine growing up in Rocky Mountain, North Carolina, I started following Carolina basketball when Charlie Scott went to
Right.
UNC, and I was in the 6th or 7th grade then, and I was still going to all African American school.
Right.
So you can imagine everybody at Annie W. Holland and J.W. Parker Junior High School was going to be the next Charlie Scott.
Sure.
And when I had an opportunity to play for Coach, it was just unbelievable. I think everybody, I think he's the greatest coach to ever live, but he's a great, great man too.
Right.
And think about him every day still.
Yeah. Well, that's the hallmark of a great man, or a great coach, right? Is to be a great man first,
Yeah.
And really have a heart to teach. And
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, that's what a coach really does.
Yeah,
I
I
think.
mean, he was hard. I mean, practices were tough.
Right.
You know, Carolina wasn't for everybody, but one thing when you went to North Carolina, you always got better. It's not one player that went to North Carolina as a freshman, and
Right.
when they left as a senior, wasn't a much better person, player and person than when you went there.
So what was it like going through integration then? You mentioned all African American
Ninth
schools.
grade.
I mean, that
I
just
think
hasn't been
if
my
I'm trying to
experience.
remember, it's a few years ago.
Yeah.
The integration happened first at senior high.
Right.
And then after senior high, it was the 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. I think J.W. Parker was the 7th grade school.
Right.
Edwards was the 8th grade school, and R.M. Wilson was the 9th grade school.
Okay.
And that's the first time that I went to school with white kids
Right.
in the 9th grade.
Because that's just something that's so foreign to me.
And my kids don't understand.
I don't
that
either. So I mean, the fact you mentioned it, I'm like, well, wow. Tell me a little bit more about this. I don't understand it, and that's probably a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know,
Yeah.
but it is what it is. And
my kids thought that was trying to explain it to them. I just said, well,
you just live with
thanks.
it. So what was your most exciting time on the basketball court, and what's been your most exciting time after you left active play? I mean, those are two very different arenas. But let's compare and contrast.
It's hard to say, my most exciting time as a basketball player, playing in North Carolina, being in the NBA,
Right.
standing on the podium with a gold medal around your neck and the national anthem playing and the flag being raised was
I
pretty
remember
cool.
that. I remember that specifically. And
So, it's just been so many things, it's hard to pick one. And afterwards, the same way. I enjoyed coaching. It was a lot of fun, as a coach, even
Right.
at my age right now, you never say never. I still get some calls from time to time. People want to know if I'm interested. And I'm enjoying what I'm doing now. I'm coming on the speakers tour. I speak with corporations. I do a lot of fellowship of Christian athletes to
Right.
share my faith. And, one of the most enjoyable things that I'm doing now is I teach small kids one-on-one lessons. And it's amazing when you teach a little 8 or 9-year-old kid something and they get it. A kid that's right-handed, you're teaching to do a left-hand layup. And
Just
when they
that light
really
bulb.
get it, and they trust it, not,
Right.
and that look that they give you, man, I mean, all the money in the world can't take that feeling away. And, I'm thinking to myself, we've still got a long ways to go. That's only a left-hand layup, but it's been really rewarding.
Well, it's got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So if you're doing one-on-one lessons, maybe you can give me some lessons.
You may be a little old. You may be aged out.
Yeah, my 40-yard sprint's not what it used to be for sure.
Mine either.
But that's great. So you get a lot of inquiries, and you're enjoying the speakers tour. Tell us a little bit about your faith. I mean,
Oh, that's great. I've I guess the last 10, 11 years of my life, I've truly dedicated my life to Jesus Christ,
Right.
and things have been so much easier and so much better for me. Coach Smith, we always knew that he was a man of faith, and he never really forced it on us,
Right.
but he would always kind of lay it on our shoulder. And I guess like 9 or 10 years ago for me, God thought it was time for me to come on to him, and I dedicated my life to him, and I plan on being that way the rest of my life.
Would you mind sharing maybe the steps that kind of led you there? Because,
Well,
rarely does anybody just wake up in the morning and say, hey, wow.
Well, I have struggled with my life, with some addictions
Sure.
all of my life. And until I completely turned my life over to Jesus Christ, it was always a problem. But now I never even think about those things. When I was in the NBA after my third year, during my third year in the NBA, I was having my best years of pro, averaging close to 20.
Well, that first year was pretty good too. Rookie of the year, 1978, was it?
78, 79, yeah. And Lord Free stuck his thumb in my eye. And even to this day, I have some double vision if I hold my head a certain way. And, as a point guard with double vision, that's kind of tough. With my game, is penetrating, seeing the periphery and everything. And I really didn't handle that very well. Instead of me figuring a way out to pulling my bootstraps up and figuring a way out, I took the easy way out. And it's just something that has bothered me a lot of my adult life. But thank Jesus Christ right now that I never think about those things anymore.
That's awesome, man. That really is.
Yeah,
I mean, just
Jesus Christ, thank you, Jesus. Yeah.
Amen. I mean, just it takes you to that next level, and then that filter makes all the difference in the world, doesn't it?
It certainly does. It certainly does. It's not on me.
No, right? And once you realize that, it's actually liberating.
As they say, if you want to make Jesus laugh, make plans.
I've made many plans, and I'm sure it's comedy hour, I suppose.
That's right.
When I'm praying sometimes. But anyway, well, that's great, man. I mean, I really appreciate you sharing that.
Well, I share a lot of that when I'm speaking to Fellowship of Christian Athletes and speaking to youth groups. I just tell them what works for me.
So what's the most significant piece of advice that you think you would provide to anybody? I mean, now that we've talked about commitment of your life to Jesus Christ, and obviously the experiences you've had.
I think fellowship in my life is extremely important. I guess I've always been the type of guy, I never liked to be alone.
Right.
I always wanted people around, so fellowship is extremely important to me. And since fellowship is extremely important, I think one of the things that I've been taught from my father and from Coach Smith, loyalty is something that is very important, in a person's friendship.
Right.
And, I would talk about being loyal and being true to yourself, having humility because of God's grace, of course, in our life as a Christian. You have to be humble because, God didn't have to choose us and he didn't have to give us grace. And, I think you have to have compassion, because God loves us. We're to love others.
Right.
So those are a few things that I think are important in a person's life.
Right. And of course, then that filters every decision that you make.
Yeah.
You were talking about a little bit earlier, failure is something I think we've all tasted, and it's not fun. But success can be even harder.
Yeah.
When all of a sudden you become the it person or things are going really well, it's harder to stay as balanced as everything you just described too.
Well, everybody shoots at the top guy.
That's right. Well,
I think it's hard to be good and to stay good, just like it's hard to get good.
Right.
So, it never ends. You're trying to get good, and then when you get good, you have to stay good. So every day you try to improve.
Right.
As a person, as a team, or whatever.
So it's been interesting, this whole COVID thing, watching the NBA, work their bubble. So
I don't know how that's working.
I was going to say, so you've got insight.
I have no idea. No, I don't.
I don't know how that would work.
Contact tracing, I don't. When you contact trace, where does it stop? Okay, if I have it and then I give it to you, so everybody you see,
right, is potentially at risk, right?
Yeah,
maybe I don't know.
Yeah, I just try. I don't live in fear, of course, but I try to be smart too.
Right.
I don't. Do. If they say stay 6 feet apart like us, stay 6 feet
right.
apart. They say
put
wear
a mask on.
If they say,
how hard is that?
If they say take the mask off, I'll take the mask off.
Wash your hands.
That's all we can do.
It's not rocket science, is it?
Yeah.
But I was just thinking more of the dynamics of having a team basically hunkered down together for an extended period of time. I just would think that would be
that when I was in school, that's how it used to be.
Is it? Okay.
Because everybody lived in the same dorm.
Okay.
Now, you got guys live in apartments off campus. But when I was at Carolina, people ask me about my career at Carolina, some of the things I remember the most. And one of the things I remember is the whole basketball team in Walter Davis's room watching The Wizard of Oz.
I know that.
And, it was, I'm talking about really getting into it.
Right.
But, you lived together, ate together, slept together. But that's how it used to be. But
that also builds a team too, though. I mean, that builds a team too.
I think so. You know,
I mean, I know
think
how
so.
you think. I
Yeah,
know
I
what you're
think
looking
so.
for. And
Yeah. When I first went back to Carolina, that's when the guys were really starting to move off campus and everything. And I always tried to get coach to, you know, make everybody stay in the dorm, but you couldn't make them. You know,
right.
things were changing so much, you had to allow them to move
Well,
off.
things are changing a whole lot. Now you've got a lot of one and done guys. They're coming in, they leave. I don't know. Maybe I'm just old enough, but I liked it when guys stayed for 4 years.
Yeah,
And I felt like I got to know them, and I
Yeah.
felt like they were my team.
Yeah.
And now it just with the in and out, it's just not the same to me. Although now it's more about the coaches, I think.
Yeah, and you can't blame them.
No.
No. I mean, I know, if you have an opportunity to, and we know money doesn't create happiness, but it does allow you to do things for your family and,
Sure.
For other organizations that you normally couldn't do without it. And when the opportunity presents itself for you to do something that you enjoy doing, that you would probably do for free,
Right.
I think you really have to consider it.
Right.
I know after my junior year, Coach Smith came to me and recommended that I go pro. And the way that he did it was he had so many friends that were scouts and head coaches and general managers and owners, and he found out where a particular person would be drafted. And
Which ties directly to the money, to the contract.
yeah,
So.
yeah, and I would have been drafted pretty high. So
Right.
he came to me and said, maybe a good idea, think about it, to go
Right.
pro. And I said, well, who's going to tell my mama? So she wouldn't have gone for that. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but my parents being teachers,
Right.
they were pretty adamant about me getting my degree at Carolina.
Oh no, I grew up in a very similar household. That was just not an option to not go.
Yeah.
And frankly, I went to college so that I could earn more money
Yeah.
post graduation. So if a guy can do that after 1 year, well, praise be to Jesus.
Yeah.
I think you ought to be able to go on and do
you can
it.
go back.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, it gets harder and harder. I mean,
Oh yeah, especially when you're kind of financially secure.
Right, right. Just the drive's just not quite the
Right,
same.
right.
And then you're that 28-year-old or 29-year-old on the campus. That doesn't
With
fly
kids.
with kids. It's
Yeah,
just a
yeah.
little different
And a
story.
wife.
It's harder. It's actually harder.
Yeah.
Well, look, what have I not asked you that I should be asking you that you
No,
feel like
it's
you
up to
ought
you.
to share? Well, I mean, this is really about sharing with folks. It's really about trying to build
It's always good
communities.
to be back in Rocky Mountain.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I tell everyone I wouldn't want to grow up in any other city in the world than
Right.
Rocky Mount. I mean, I enjoy myself here. The people here treated me so nice, and they still do.
Sure.
So kind, and like we were talking earlier, growing up, you know what park to play in.
That's it.
Everybody kind of knew everybody. Even before integration, guys would play basketball together. Guys would play, baseball.
Sure.
Pick up football and stuff together. So you kind of knew.
Right.
Who was kind of good.
I may not
who
see you in
wasn't
science
good.
class, but I saw you on the playing field.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So it's a great place growing up. I still love Rocky Mountain. Rocky Mountain would always be home for me.
Well, it is for me too. I have a passion for this community. I love it. I love the folks in it, and I want to see her prosper and just how to grow folks.
Yeah.
And that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
We have a median household income of about $38,000, which is pretty low. It's lower than the statewide average. So the question really becomes, how do you elevate everybody and create those opportunities?
That's the thing. Yeah, you have to create jobs that people want.
That's it.
And hopefully a corporation or some organization will come to Rocky Mountain, take a
Right.
chance on us, because this is a fantastic community.
Right.
I was driving down here thinking about it today, about how I was fortunate enough to have so many great coaches in my life, like Coach Lawrence, Denver Lawrence, and Coach Henderson, and Coach Hicks unfortunately passed a few years ago.
Coach Henderson was there when I was there.
Yeah, I don't know if you knew Denver. When I was in the
did not.
7th grade, to this day, I don't know how I made the football team. But Coach Lawrence kept me on the football team, and I was terrible as a 7th grader. I was terrible as an 8th grader.
I don't know why they let you play football. To me, that's a high risk sport for one of the most talented point guards I've ever seen.
Yeah, I didn't know. But by the time I became a 9th grader and moved to R.M. Wilson, which I would have played for him as a 9th grader, I was a pretty good little quarterback.
Right.
But, that's just great coaching, because he took me from being terrible to being serviceable.
That's the whole idea, right?
And some of the things that I learned from Coach Henderson, I use it throughout my career. Even as a pro, like getting back on defense, seeing the ball, backpedaling back on defense,
Right.
In North Carolina, people talk about our scramble, our traps. Well, we were doing that in the 8th grade under Coach Henderson.
Absolutely, absolutely. He had a pretty good little career himself. I mean, he's done great.
I wouldn't want to grow up any other place than Rocky Mount.
Right. So tell me about the Four Corners. You got to.
Well, first off, and I'm not being humble. This is true.
But you can't talk to Phil Ford, not talking about Four Corners.
All right. Four Corners was in North Carolina before I got there.
Okay.
And after I left.
All right. I know it was there after you left.
In order for Four Corners to work, this is how it worked. You have to have 5 very good ball handlers on the court, because if they realized there was a bad ball handler, they would just funnel the ball to that person. 5 very good free throw shooters that could hit free throws in some really hard, tough situations. All right. And you had to have 5 very good defenders, because this is how Four Corners work. People actually thought that we were stalling, and we would. If you didn't come out and guard us, if we were up, I would just hold the ball under my arm for the rest of the game.
Dribble enough, get the 3 seconds, go, stop.
Yeah. But if you came out and guarded us, we weren't going to shoot a jump shot. Now, Walter Davis was the only one that could shoot like a 2 or 3 foot jumper, because to him that was a layup. I mean, he had his touch. But all of us, we were either going to get a layup or free throws. And I would dribble around a little bit, acting like I wasn't looking to score. But when I saw an opening, I would go. When I picked it up, we had a play that I knew one of the lower guys were going to go back door. And we got fouled, we hit the foul shots. Well, after doing that, it was very important to go down the other end and play very good defense, because most times the other team, out of frustration, would go down and take a quick bad shot.
Right.
So it was very important to box out, make sure we get that rebound, come down, do it a little again, and before you know it, you're up 8 or 9 points, and that was pretty much the game back then.
Right.
But, we were.
Well, there was no 3-pointer. There was no shot clock, if I recall. That was the game.
People either loved it or hated it.
Depends on whether you were pulling for Carolina that night or not, really.
I get a lot of credit for Four Corners, but you had to have 5 guys to make it work.
Well, I think you made it look effortless and seamless.
Trust me, we practiced it every day. Coach Bill, we worked on it.
I'm sure you did. But, that's also the part of it, to be able to get that layup, is you got to have that ball handler that you've got, to your point. I've got to keep an eye on them, because if I don't, I can't spread the court. You can't do what you need to do to get the free basket.
We were fortunate in Carolina. We had 3 or 4 guys that could have played in the middle. It's just that me being the point guard, I was in the middle most times.
Sure. Well, we talk about scoring and talk about point guard, but you had probably as many assists. You led the season in assists more often than you did not. And that's the one thing that I don't think everybody ever talks about, or you don't get the credit for it. But it's that sharing and giving the ball at the moment to allow somebody else to score that created as much greatness as anything else.
When I was working with the point guards at Carolina, I always tried to tell them, to me, I thought a point guard that could score was a little more important to his team than a scoring point guard.
Right.
Because as a point guard, it's kind of like a quarterback. You got to do a little of everything.
Right.
You got to distribute the ball, get everybody involved, defend,
and I think,
call the plays.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you do have to score. So if you can, that's good. But if you're looking to score as your first option, I think sometimes as a point guard that hurts the team. The higher you go up, now if you got a 7th or 8th grader point guard who can fill it up, let him go. But when you get up to the ACC and NBA, it's a little different.
But I think it's an allegory for life too, right? The more I share, the more I create opportunities, the more success I provide to somebody else, the more I do get back. And I think that gets lost on folks.
Yeah.
And the basketball, I think that really, really, really is illustrated as much there as anywhere else.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's fantastic. So, Coach Thompson, head basketball coach at Weston, was on our show earlier. So I know Reggie is the one who kind of beat you into getting here.
I don't know how anyone can say no to my man Reggie Barrett.
So you've touched on it a little bit, but one of the things he was indicating, you talk to his team. I know you do on a fairly constant basis. But what do you tell folks that want to be like you?
I think it's an honor, but I don't think I'm anything special. I mean, I'm just a kid from Rocky Mount that love sports.
Sure.
I don't think I'm the most talented basketball player to come out of Rocky Mount. You know, growing up, it was so many more guys that were more talented than me. Now, I don't think anybody would do exactly what the coach said more than me.
Okay.
You know, because when coaches told me to do something, I tried to listen and do exactly what they said and play as hard as I could all the time. But I just loved to play ball growing up, whether it's football, basketball, or baseball. My dad, you know, is the one that got me into sports. When I was a little boy, he would hit me grounders, and baseball was my first love. I mean, I still love baseball. I listen to baseball on the radio. Big Yankee fan.
Are you now? Okay.
Glad we're starting to hit the ball a little bit now. But it was my dad, you know, that he grew up. His dad was a tenant farmer, so, you know, he had to work on the farm. And he couldn't play sports.
Right.
But even as a little boy, he would let me drag along with him. And, you know, like I said, you know, he was always hanging around coaches. And, you know, like Harvey Reed was a great friend of his. And when I was in elementary school, I knew Coach Henderson because Coach Henderson and Coach Reed were neighbors. And, you know, I guess you would have to say it was my dad that got me involved.
Well, it's funny. Yeah, my dad, his passion was baseball as well. I just loved it. So he passed away a little bit early, you know, 66 or so in age, and which used to seem really old until I got a little bit older myself, and now it seems really too young. But regardless, so as part of the legacy there, I took my youngest son, and we did a baseball tour. So we've hit every single stadium in the country.
That is fantastic.
Man, it was so much fun to do that. And I do have a passion for baseball, not to the level of listening to it on the radio, but I do enjoy going to the park and experiencing it and just the joy of all that.
Yeah.
And I grew up a Yankee fan as well, but that was because I think as much because of Jim Catfish Hunter and some of that's right, and some of those you know, folks down east.
Clyde King.
That's right, that I could identify with,
King,
and so that was a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, but anyway, that's great. Look, the proverbial music is starting to play, and so I want to end the segment a little bit. So I want to thank you for coming, and I want to just offer you the mic here to say anything that you feel like that our audience could do as a word of encouragement to Rocky Mount and their citizens. That would be just fantastic.
Well, as I said before, just be proud of being from Rocky Mount. I'm a Griffon. I'm always going to be a Griffon, and as I said, I wouldn't want to grow up any other place in the world than Rocky Mount, North Carolina. I mean, we have a great city.